All right, Ravi bhai, I think we can start. People can keep joining. We have
Sure.
already around 40 or so people who are online.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
Sure.
thank you.
So let's go ahead.
Adi, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining for the eGov talk. One housekeeping rule that I'd like to mention before we begin is that this is a normal Zoom session and not a webinar session. So I'll request everyone to keep their mics on mute. We will have a question and answer session towards the end. So we can have your questions at that time. Uh, I'll quickly introduce Dr. Ravikant Joshi, or Ravi Bhai as he is endearingly called. He is a urban finance and management specialist. He is the former chief accounts officer of Vadodara Municipal Corporation, where he was responsible for conceptualization, designing, and implementation of municipal finance, budgetary, and accounting system reforms, as well as the computerization of the Vadodara Municipal Corporation. Over 35 years, and I think even more than that, he has worked as a consultant with multilaterals like the World Bank, Water and Sanitation Program, ADB, USAID, DFID, UN Habitat, and many others, national and state level organizations on urban issues. He has, alongside worked with many civil society organizations like Yuva, Priya, Janagra, and Center of Environmental Education. He is also a researcher. He has carried out research studies and published more than 25 research papers pertaining to urban issues. And Dr. Joshi is also a guest faculty at several national and international institutions, and has also served as the chair professor for urban management in St. Joseph College of Business Administration in Bangalore. He is currently championing the National Urban Livelihoods Mission within the ministry, as well as with the larger urban ecosystem. And we are very delighted that Dr. Joshi has accepted our invitation to deliver a talk on the same subject, which is reimagining the life and livelihoods for the migrants and urban poor. So without any further delay, Ravi bhai, over to you.
Thanks, Gautam, Aditya, and E-Governance Foundation. I'm associated with this organization when it was conceived, and inception started around 2000, 2002, 2002. So it's good, and really I love this topic to talk. And of course, I will be again coming back to you in the next session because they have requested me. So let's get started. I want to quickly go through, in fact, everybody of you know, because recently in this pandemic, we all know the exodus of migrants and the related issues and how government responded to that. And then all of a sudden, all these people, urban poor, migrants and all that, they become visible to us. They were not in our conception, unfortunately, but now they are very much there. And you must be seeing that many governments are taking many steps. Different things are getting announced. We also, I was part of this PM Swanidhi, that is the affordable credit to the street vendors. For the first time, that kind of a scheme has come, and for last 1 month, almost everybody is going for that, right from PMO directly, continuously monitoring. When we look at any urban poor, there are different kind of vulnerabilities which he face, and one need to structure government programs and policies to help that urban poor. And when I'm saying urban poor, migrants are included because migrants are basically urban poor. So migrant issue has additional dimension beside a urban poor who may be in a city and who may not have migrated. So there can be urban poor who is a migrant, or urban poor who has been born and brought up in that city, but has whole life being urban poor. And then there will be a migrant who has come from other place, who is a rural poor or a urban poor in his state, but he has migrated for livelihood to the another city, and there again he is a urban poor and a migrant. So there is a one residential vulnerability. There is a Prime Minister Awas Yojana which tried to sort it out. Then Day NULM, that is National Urban Livelihood Mission, we look for the shelters for homeless people. Then there is a economic vulnerability, and there again National Urban Livelihood Program helps to to get people organized in a social institution called self-help groups or neighborhood groups. That entire initiative, then skilling program. There is another PMKKY entire skilling program and skilling ministry, but NULM funds the poor, urban poor, to get that skilling. So PMKKY is there for general and including the poor, but they NULM has a specific mandate of helping the financially poor to get that skilling. Then there is a affordable credit, because that is again another solution to overcome the economic affordability, economic vulnerability. And there are different kind of plethora of loan instruments, whether it is a mudra or like that kind of a thing. Occupational vulnerabilities, Ministry of Labor and Employment, Uniform Labor Code for unorganized sector workers. There is a specific act in 2007-8, that is Unorganized Sector Workers Welfare Act, which has not been implemented across the India in a right spirit and in a right manner. Then there are individual state-specific welfare boards for unorganized workers under that act, or state can have its own additional acts. Then there are specific ministry-led insurance schemes, as you know, Jana Dhan Yojana and Jana Arogya Yojana and all such kind of thing. Then social vulnerability, as I said, there is a PMAY scheme. Then in NULM, we do the formation of the SSGs, which overcomes the social vulnerability. Then Ministry of Women and Child Welfare led targeted approach on gender-based welfare programs, and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare targeted approach towards the health measure. In fact, there are 24 safety net cum welfare scheme of Government of India, covering different aspects of vulnerability. But the issue is there is a lack or no integrated approach to address urban poverty. And then there is a lack of policy on urban poverty elevation, lack of institutional structure, and most importantly, why I accepted this invitation, because behind all these, there is a technological solution problem. We have so much great examples of our technocrats, particularly IT technocrats, coming out and specifically solving the problems of data and the delivery of the service and all that. E-Governance Foundation formed with that and helping government in different sectors. You are helping that. You are doing a social cause, social entrepreneurship. But somewhere today's my lecture is basically to bring all of you's attention towards the solving the issue. And here government may not come to you, but it is we all who will need to volunteer. I'm not a technical person, but we all, I am saying, need to approach with the solutions to the government to overcome the life and livelihood problem of the urban poor and migrant. So that is the base and that is the objective of this talk with you. That is the real crux which is missing, that we are not being able to integrate. You can see this another next slide. In fact, we do not have a common standard national definition of identifying the urban poor. Every state has a different definition, different records are utilized, and still each and every urban poor is not covered, because most of these things are static in data. It's not dynamic. And we have such a tragedy that even if you notice that there is a urban poor, by all account, he is a urban poor, and being a good person, you want to help him, you will not be able to register him as a urban poor and get the benefits to them. Why not you? But even government officer, even if I or any joint secretary of Government of India goes, he will not be able to do that. Take example, BPL cards. In fact, below poverty line cards are in many places that data is 10 years, 15 years old. It has not been revised, because every time if it's a political decision and you go for that, and then it will open up the hornet's nest, because what is happening that immediately then there will be plethora of the problems as you open it. But in that, so state governments don't go for opening it. It's a political decision. Even ration cards. Why a ration card should not be 24/7, 365 days? allowed to apply. You are poor, I am poor. If I want to apply, I should be able to apply for it any day for BPL card. Why I should have to wait that one day government will start the survey and I will get included? Until that time, I have to wait. So it is something kind of a windfall. Or ACCC data we got in 2011, along with the census, socio-economic survey has been done. And in fact, you know, Ayushman Bharat, which has again a great feature of portability, a very good scheme covering up to 5 lakh rupees medical this. But you know what is the problem with Ayushman Bharat? It has a static data because it has taken ACCC data as a base, and ACCC data covers some 18 categories. So it was a very good exercise, taking all different 18 categories of identifying the urban poor, and they identified it. But unfortunately, any person who by stroke of misluck or unfortunately he becomes an urban poor in 2012, take my word, he's not in ACCC and he is not entitled for Ayushman Bharat card. Because Ayushman Bharat card takes the data, ACCC data, which is static in 2011. 11 categories of that data has been included. It has all advanced feature and technological backup that any person who is in ACCC data can get that Ayushman Bharat card, but who is not in ACCC data, even if he is in abject poverty, he will not get that benefit. Same is with different kind of these things. So data is static, not updated, schemes come and go, they get announced, and there is no universal definition. If in income tax, we have a universal definition of an income that up to 2.5 lakh, you are exempt, and then for 3 lakh, about 2 lakh 5,000, 2 lakh 50,000 to 5 lakh 10% income tax. Why there cannot be a national definition of urban poverty? Who is urban poor? Every state and politically, governments have shied away from defining urban poor. So the main issue is of identification and enumeration. There is no uniform principle. I gave you the example of Ayushman Bharat very recently. Say NULM. In NULM, as I said, any urban poor, we provide 4 kind of facility to him. One is social mobilization, means federating them into social mobilization groups or neighborhood groups, and then providing them the skilling. So any unemployed urban youth want to reskill him or want to skill him, he gets completely that skilling program free of him. But if he belongs to the same state, in each state, each and every urban poor is entitled, and across all the 3,000 or 4,000 cities, NULM is implemented. But if you have migrated from Patna, if a 14-year-old boy has come to the Mumbai or Bangalore and has been doing, say, in restaurant work, simple of cleaning the tables and all that. Now he desires or he wishes that why I can't do a food stewards or that kind of a skilling program which is there in NULM and free of cost, so that I will improve my economic viability and my earning capacity. He can't do it because he is from Bihar. If he is in Patna or any city of Bihar, he is entitled for NULM skilling. And similarly, if any urban poor of Mumbai can take that course, so in one restaurant, if 2 urban poor urban youth are working unskilled and want to approach for any skilling program, there are plethora of skilling programs freely available, but Mumbai urban poor, because of his domicile status, will get it, and this person will have to go back to the Bihar. So portability is the biggest issue. In all these schemes, identification, enumeration is the first issue, and second issue is of a portability. Very recently, you must have heard that our ration card has been made portable after almost 10 years of discussion and all that. And luckily, this pandemic gave flip to that. There may be some ground level teething problem, but what finance minister has promised that from 1st January or at the most, let's say 1st April 2021, each and every migrant will be able to get his food distribution benefit across the India in any corner of the India if he is. Same is, you can see PMY is based on EWS and LIG category, and every scheme has a different threshold. So if you are having 3 lakh rupees annual income for your family, you can get EWS or LIG housing under the PMAY, or under day NULM, different categories, again state-wise, because day NULM does not define urban poverty criteria. Ayushman Bharat, I said, whoever is in that ACCC data, but even if today there is any person who is, now then he has to be homeless. So if urban poor is there who is not in ACCC data, then he has to be a homeless person staying on a footpath. Then government can pick him up, and under the homeless category, then even if he is not in ACCC data, he will get the medical benefit or shelter benefit. Then there is a non-participatory mechanism. Means everybody, every agency can simply see a person, even if he is a urban poor, he will not, it will not be able to help because it's not open, or it's not 24/7, 365 days identification of urban poor. And none of these is impossible. I know, I don't have to tell you, all know that everybody of you can work out a technological solution with your colleagues and overcome this. Such a disjointed data, each and every scheme enumerates, identifies, though it is made for urban poor, differently with different criterias, and this data is not speaking. And therefore, we do not know how many exactly urban poor we have. Probably government may be knowing if they have run any program in the backup, but it's not in public domain. So PMAY housing program will give you a different set of number of the people, beneficiaries of PM housing scheme, that these many people are EWS and BPL. PDS system, that is ration card, would give you a different BPL. ACCC data will give you a different this thing. Then Jan Dhan Yojana will give you differently. Jana Arogya Yojana will give you. So, I as a layman, I don't understand why this person cannot be triangulated. We have Aadhaar data, we have BPL card data, we have NFS card, that is PDS PDS distribution card, then housing scheme, and all such can be triangulated and a person can be mapped. But as I said, there is no enumeration criteria, systematic, national, universal. Then identification is a problem, portability is a problem. Next problem is a disjointed data set across the programs, which are isolated in silos. And this is all, and last crux is the domicile requirement, and everything is linked to the domicile status. And then at political and social level, he's an outsider. He should not be. So there is that kind of a pressure that people should not come into Bangalore, should not come into Mumbai, should not come into Kerala, in Punjab. So there is a anti-migration mindset, which may be probably under this. So that's an additional dimension. So there is a blind spot in the data. And because of this, the poorest of the poor, vulnerable populations like sanitation workers, even still we have manual scavenger problem. Why it should be? Having such a Swachh Bharat mission wherein it is claimed that almost 66 lakhs individual toilets has been constructed, 5 lakh community toilets. Yes, they may have got constructed, but why still there is the issue of manual scavengers or sanitation, rack pickers? Nobody has thought of integrating rack pickers. In fact, I don't know whether rack pickers have the Aadhaar card, whether rack pickers have the other social benefit welfare. We every day see them. But neither government nor organizations, we can't say that each and every rag picker in India, he may be doing a rag picking job, but he is in data set and he is covered by the essential for which he is eligible welfare and safety net scheme. So plethora of the schemes, such a big institution, so many technocrats, bureaucrats, experts, everything we got. But at the same time, the issue is that the poorest of the poor or the person at the bottom of the pyramid not covered. I haven't brought another issue, but I know there are nomadic people who semi-nomadic, not now completely nomadic, but this all semi-nomadic pastoral people are not even in voter list because they move from one city to another city. They stay 3 months in their main village, but they are not in the main village. They stay on a outskirts of the village and they move around. And it's not a small number. It's more than 50 million people. Similarly, homeless people, staggering number, rag pickers, transgenders. So all these people, our data capturing systems, our schemes are not able to cover. And because they are not covered, see, simple thing, why migrants were invisible to the political decision makers? Because they don't have voting right in the city in which they are working for 8 months, 9 months. So naturally, they don't have any demographic pullover. They do not have any demographic asset. They matter much into their own, and you must have seen that in pandemic, when the exhaust started, they were many important for their rural politicians over there, and they came into gear to making their arrangement when they reach over there. But nobody was trying to solve up their transit, and they were not addressed in the city in which they were working. So there was an attempt in the NULM 2 years back, and I will say that sanitation workers and rag pickers SSGs are getting created, transgenders SSGs are getting created now, but it's a drop, it's a beginning. So I continuously said invisibility of urban migrant. Till this COVID, the figure is staggering, but we all were getting benefits of it. We never known, were never bothered that yes, they are living here, and if they are living in the city, how they are living. Invisible in the census also. In national sample survey, NSSO data doesn't capture, census doesn't capture. At the moment, now each and every migrant data hopefully is captured, but it hasn't come into, because they were put into the camps in the cities. Then each and every migrant was registered while transporting back. Then they had to report when they reached to their native place. So even today somebody works, and I'm sure that data is there with the government. Now each and everybody's Aadhaar number and everything is mapped. And some states have now come out with the Migration Commission and such kind of initiatives which they are created. This entire data collection can be done, and with technological solutions, we will be able to find out that who, and we can do it's their migration mapping entire thing. But unfortunately, that's the frontier, and today's talk is basically to request you to bring to your notice that this is the something our country need, and somewhere we will have to volunteer on our own, because this data is again sensitive. In fact, each city, each district collector has mapped number of the migrants. Each and every migrant this time, when he threw away the invisibility of him, he made a statement. I really fascinated by the kind of thing they did. They simply started walking and removed this 50, 60 years invisibility. Without speaking any word, what a statement. And we all are talking now. Everybody of India had to take a note. So it is something kind of a very Gandhian. just such a kind of a social event that they simply started walking without saying, and then media did the rest, and it reached to each and every nooks and corners and consciousness of each and every Indian. So they are excluded from schemes, enumeration, almost more than 100 million to 180 million, but there are different kind of migrants. In fact, one way we all are migrant, and we are new kind of urban nomadic migrant, highly mobile, moving from one lucrative job to the another lucrative job, and one city to the another city. So in a one way, we are also migrants, seasonal migrants we are going, but only our difference is that we are seasonal, that we go for 2-3 months onshore job to the US, Canada, or I, for example, for last 20 years, I used to call jokingly myself as an urban nomad, because for last 20 years in my urban consultancy, I visited more than 100 cities of India and worked over there. So I will go there for 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, repeatedly visits, migrant, but privileged migrant. And then there are other migrants. So at least this recent data, the exodus shows that, again, there is no data in public domain placed, but estimate is that around uh, uh, 20 million to 30 million people migrated back to their native places. So that is the situation. The definition is the person who is, this definition is not new to us, because all NRIs knows that if you are 180 days outside India, then you are a NRI. Similarly, the person who has stayed away from the village or town for a period of 1 month or more, but less than 6 months, he is a seasonal migrant, correct? Sometimes they stay even for 10 months and go for 2 months back to their places, correct? The way marine sailors come back with a 2 months holiday, or military people. But our Indian statistical system is not designed to capture such a temporary migration. 2-3 years back, this economic survey has said, looking at the railway traffic, and they came out that some 10 million seasonal migrants are there, who at a seasonal end come back to the village and go again back to the urban, and they derived that through the analysis of the your railway data, railway ticketing data. Good effort, but a question arises that why we need a mirror for a bangle in your wrist or your wristwatch. To see the wristwatch, you don't require mirror. This is again a old, but we all know where the migration is. But now it has become more complex. It's not that. There is an intra-state migration, which is also a big one. Correct? Then here Punjab is not shown. It is not only urban poor, but there is a rural to rural migration. Entire Punjab, the farm laborers are coming from the Bihar and Odisha and other West Bengal. They go over there, in Kerala also. So I belong to the coastal Maharashtra, and not Indian migration, coastal Maharashtra, Alfonso, in seasonal thing, because we have our orchard also, and I know that right from the earlier, the local people, village people used to take down those mangoes, pluck the mangoes. Today, Nepalis come to the entire coastal Maharashtra and do that job. So there is a migration from rural to rural, agriculture to agriculture, not only urban, but at the moment we are not covering that. But yes, one will have to address technological solutions for that migration. So entire mapping of the migration, whether it is happening for urban areas or rural areas. Then these are the hotspots. This PPT is going to be with you, so I will not be spending much of the time. And then construction sector is the main area where there is then domestic workers, textile industry, brick kilns, mines, quarries, small manufacturing, forging days, then those people who are doing this cutting of the metals and all those things, agriculture and food processing, head loading and hotel dhabas and restaurants. This again tells you which scheme covers whom or migrants. And you can see that most of the schemes are not covering migrant, because the eligibility criteria is such that migrants are not covered by all these schemes. Particularly PM Awas Yojana, you are not covered. In our National Urban Livelihood Mission, with which I worked for last 3 years, I told you that, and this also, in fact, I felt ashamed having worked for the 3 years as a national. The day migrant exodus started, and it struck to me that a boy or anybody, there is a domicile status important, and he can't have NULM benefit if he's in another state. So I must admit that I, having worked for the 3 years NULM till the date this exodus of the migrants started, and when I started thinking about this migrants and issue, I realized that the scheme with which I worked as a technical team leader, but I also miss that, because our mind is conditioned to overlook these things, and we have never been exposed to this. So it's going to be with you, so you take a time to look at it. So two issues in labor migration: one is mobility and another is the informality. In fact, you also know that out of our entire employment level population, or all the working class, whoever is doing any kind of a job, 90% is informal. Only 10% people are in formal job. So our entire economy and entire labor market, informality is not new, but this informality. So one way now I am also freelance consultant, means being an informality, not in a formal job, correct? But it's different. But there are definitely 60% people of that entire informality who are really not, or at least 40 to 50% of the informal sector jobs are something which are low paid, which doesn't have documented labor work. Recruitment and employment is mediated through long channels of the contractors. There are no records. They are not in labor commissioners in that entire thing. Their movements are undocumented. Similarly, their recruitments are undocumented, because labor law says that if any unit has more than 10 laborers, then it is the job of an employer to register his workers with the labor commissioner. Correct? But if you have only 5 people team, and you have a small auto repairing shop, or lathe work kind of a thing, or welding, or scrap metal industry kind of a thing, as an employer, you are not required to register. You will say that as an individual, you can go and register that I am so and so laborer. But that process is so cumbersome. And some places that process is not available. Means you can't go and register yourself unless until that kind of a system. And that's a shocking thing. You and me don't require registration. That's a different thing. But a person who has come from one state to another state, or within that state, say somebody has come from the small village of Karnataka into Bangalore and is working in an auto repairing shop, and he want to say that I am an unorganized sector worker, and there is an Unorganized Sector Worker Act in India 2008, in Karnataka also. Register me as an unorganized sector worker and give me benefit, safety net, whatever, insurance, medical and all that. You will not be, because that act is a national act, and again state has to come out with the scheme. Let me give you example of Gujarat. In Gujarat, welfare board has been created, but government of Gujarat has come out that the 4 categories of the workers, unorganized sector workers, will be entitled for the registration. Street vendors, and that scheme is applicable in 4 cities. Now there are 179 urban areas or cities, 7 big cities in Gujarat, where the municipal corporations are there. And then definitely there are 15-20 cities which are more than 3 lakh population or 3 to 5 lakh population, or more than 1 lakh population cities are there. But no, that scheme. So even if there is a unorganized sector workers welfare act, national act, states have implemented in a very partial manner for certain professions. So in Gujarat, if you are a domestic worker and you are from within the state, from another area, you are not entitled for the registration, because that scheme has not been made applicable. So even if you will go to the labor commissioner officer or labor commissioner office, you will not be able to do self-registration. So there is a urban exclusion is so stark and manifest in itself in many fronts: social rights, urban public provisioning. Where these migrants are staying, they stay in the slums. In fact, migrants stay with the urban poor, who is little bit up. Means if you have seen Bombay, those 3-story slums in Dharavi and all that, the pictures which I have shown, ground floor, probably that urban poor, domestic urban poor or local domiciled urban poor will stay, who owns that house or whatever it may be. And on the top 2 floors, this migrant urban poor will stay. So to sum up, there is a limited portability of social right. Then for migrant, there is a special act, Interstate Migrant Workers Act. Essentially says that it is the contractor, labor contractor, he will take the people from one state to another state, and he will seek the permission at both the places. Suppose he is taking 100 people from the Bihar as a construction worker to the Mumbai, then he will have license from both the places, and then he will maintain, because then labor department will recognize him because labor department has given him a registration, and then he will have to take care of welfare of those employees and pay their ESSI and all those things. But if you are individually migrating, then, and if you are, so that entire piece of act is outdated now. As a reaction, you must have seen that when this exodus started, one chief minister of very big state from where the people migrate came out on, and then he retracted that statement, because he said that if now anybody has to take migrant worker from my state, he will have to seek permission of us. Then another state which receives the migration, that CM came out and said that any migrant entering into my state will have to take the permission. Fortunately, that didn't go ahead. Both the CMs that were retracted the statement, but it was coming out from that. And look at this Migrant Act, its structure. It's good in intention, it is good, but it has not been implemented. But it is something like colonial masters 200 years back taking Indian laborers to the Mauritius, to the Fiji, and then at that time they will take government permission that I am taking 100 people to the Mauritius as a sugarcane worker, and then when he lands over there, he takes the permission. Where is that migrant person rights and all those things? Then there is a dichotomy in the urban governance and labor governance, though there is no integration. Labor department is woefully so short of, it's not their problem, but they are institutionally so short of the bandwidth that if tomorrow we take a job of registering each and every informal sector worker under different professions, they do not have that. So we'll require really a massive technological solution, because the number is so huge. As I said, it may be around 180 million people. And then next point mine is of profiling them under the various welfare scheme and safety net scheme and seeing that they get those, whatever for which they are eligible. So no means to assert political agency, I said, no voting rights, dichotomy in urban governance. Urban governance, the mandate is not to serve migrants. It is the larger mandate is there to serve the urban poor. Many places migrant workers stay in the workplace only, not in a formal, because they are there for seasonal 3 months, 6 months. So he stays in a workplace, employer makes some kind of a arrangement. Look at the Surat, those textile workers, they stay 24 hours in that campus on the textile days with a poor kind of a accommodations, and the food not supplied by the employer. Some places it is supplied by the employers, but some places employer just makes an arrangement with some grocers and some kind of dabbawalas who supply the tiffin. In fact, migrant workers end up spending 60 to 70% on three things when he come to the city. The study shows he spends mainly on staying, then secondly on his what we can say food and all that thing, rent, food, and third is this medical kind of a thing. He just barely able to save 30 to 40%, but the push of poverty is so much that even 40% sustains his family in the rural areas or in the smaller areas in that states from where he has migrated. Isn't that high level people, IT migrants and the high level engineering graduates and the doctors too when they go to the US? In fact, one of the large chunk of foreign exchange India gets, you all know, from the repatriation money, repatriation dollars, we get that money. And therefore, Ministry of Foreign Affairs goes on educating you, ready to help you, that before you migrate, they are ready to help you, whether you have selected a right employer, whether the person who is taking you over there is a licensed contractor, and all other things, and embassies are ready to help you out when you are in another state. But none of the city, you have a center which is ready to help a migrant. Some NGOs are doing pioneering work here and there. Ajivika Bureau has done, or some governments have done that kind of a smaller kind of a thing. But if you are a migrant, you don't know when before migrating that should I migrate to the Bangalore, or he use his peer group, informal thing, because from his village somebody is there in Mumbai, somebody is there in Bangalore, somebody is there in Delhi. And always remember, migration is a very selective, conscious activity of human being. And entire human civilization become possible only because of the migration. It is the instinct of the migration, it is the urge to migrate that really spread entire people, entire human civilization in different corners of the world. And today's civilization become possible only because of the migration. And even today, it is the migration which is really helps cities and entire economy. But they do very low hazardous work, mostly unskilled. As I said, no opportunity for advancement in value chain. Very rare examples. Means he will start as a laborer and become a mason and like that kind of a thing. It takes 20 years to become a mason. Though there are now skilling program, there are courses. No recourse to the legal aid. And weak enforcement and regulation of workers' rights and entitlement, because they are not registered at all. In fact, they are not considered fit for registration because scheme is not there. Many states do not have registration for domestic workers. And in each of our house, there is a domestic worker, but we never have asked that, are you registered? Are you getting any benefits? Because as we also know back at a subconscious level that as soon as they are registered, or if they are somewhere, we may have to give them weekly holiday, or we may have to give insurance premium. We don't know, one day government will bring in that kind of a thing, that being an employer, you have to pay her Arogya Bima Yojana premium. Anyway, so these are some of the issues. As I said, political class has ignored due to their mobile nature. They don't find any place to, even trade unions have not recognized these migrant workers. Then there is a low interstate portability, and finally we all ignore. That is the point I was making, because it was not our concern. It was nobody's concern. Capacity, I said, ULB and Labor Department both are woefully short. So we will have to have technological options to overcome that bandwidth problem. The capacity can be increased by creating different community platforms, sensitive city managers, sensitive labor managers, then implementation of 74 constitutions. So lot many things can be done. Area sabhas, ward committees. Many of you may be knowing the work of Janagraha. So, and there are many kind of Praja, Lok Satta, many organizations who are working on a grassroots democracy in urban areas. So they all come together, like eGov Foundation, technological, social entrepreneurs come together. Then we have some hope of solving this problem. So there's a need for integrated approach to work with the urban poor and migrant, lack of universal criteria. So we need universal criteria, definition, enumeration solutions, and portability solutions. Even the urban poor don't know about the benefits and what they are entitled. So there is an information asymmetry, and therefore they are not able to. I'm going to give two examples, but I'm very happy I was able to conceive those, and then it worked. And then overall weak institutional and individual capacities, Labor Department, ULBs, and everybody to ensure. So machinery is woefully short. Some governments have taken recently some solutions or the response, but it is all knee-jerk response and again isolated. Now every state who have sent the migrants or from where the migrants go away are saying that we will create a job portal, migration commission, and then UP and Bihar and MP, Uttarakhand, stating that we will see that each and every migrant get work in their state. Alas, then what will do other state? Some kind of a very knee-jerk, and then they started asked machineries that find out, do their skill mapping. Skill mapping is a good thing. Each and every migrant, if skill map, you know that where he is, and then skilling program can be better structured. He can be reskilled to increase his livelihood capacity. All good, but the entire approach is again of a isolation or segmenting it. Every state is trying to respond because they have to show it. They have these migrants and the urban poor have come out of the invisibility, and somebody has to now address that. Other states where migrants were coming, they are facing problem, and we all know that there is a shortage of the laborers and all that. And then there was a call for Bhumiputras to come forward. If each and every rickshawala from Bombay goes back, now 70% of the rickshawalas, earlier 100% rickshawalas were locals. Now 70% of the rickshawalas are from UP and Bihar. And if they don't run the rickshaws, do you think that each and every local urban poor will replace him? No, because Karnataka, Maharashtra, Punjab, these have moved to the later stage. Correct? So America First or Atmanirbhar, these all have its validity, but at the same time, in economic strata and in you have moved to the another thing. Who made that space available? The local person who was earlier rickshaw driver has moved in his economic life upward, thankfully. Correct? And therefore there is a space for somebody else to come in. Earlier in my childhood, I know that I belong to the coastal Maharashtra. Entire Mumbai was served by the domestic workers, male domestic workers coming from the Konkan, that is the coastal Maharashtra. So each and every village, a male person would be in Bombay doing a domestic work. you can see in old movies. Now it is replaced by the local ladies as a domestic workers mainly, and then they belong to the different parts of the Maharashtra. The drought ridden 2008 or back, when there was a big drought in the Marathwada and Vidarbha and all other part of the Maharashtra, such a big exodus happened to the Bombay. Not to speak of Bangladeshis, which they go on saying that Bangladeshis are in big number in Bombay, serving as domestic workers and other things. So good response with the good intention are happening, correct? Migrants are going to come back to the city because you will get 8,000 over there. He needs 20,000, which Bombay offers or Bangalore offers. The day COVID will open and means all this economy will open, and it's not something like that. Our cities don't require them. We require them. What is most important? Migration is not a problem. Taking care of them in a right manner is a solution. So this slide gives you different kind of things, but it is happening in a different direction. Again, there is no cohesive, integrated approach nationwide where center and states and the local bodies come together, all come together and trying to address this issue in a cohesive and comprehensive, holistic manner. As I said, we need them safe to ensure our survival of the big cities. How we get them back, that's the problem. We need to sustaining city survival, every city. And it's not like that people are not migrating to the UP. If you remember, CM UP was saying that 20 lakh people from Bihar and Orissa were in Lucknow and Patna. And it's not like that everybody is migrating to the US and UK and developed countries. Many Indians are migrating to the underdeveloped countries also, or developing countries also. So migration is not only from underdeveloped to the developed areas, it's crisscrossing.
Sorry, Ravi bhai, just to
yes.
Do you have a few more slides, or we will plan
just
accordingly for the
more
questions?
Slides, and we are ending. Yeah.
Sure.
So most of these I have covered, that what need to be done. There should be a migration facility centers for self-registration. First of all, we have to make that 24/7, 365-day registration and enumeration. Online doesn't require working day and all that. So universal access to, and it should be delinked from the domicile status. Urban poor is urban. He is an Indian citizen, belong to any state, working in any area, living in any nooks and corners of country, should be entitled for all the benefits and should be entitled for registration. Profiling will be a main thing, because we need to profile each person against different those welfare scheme. And there is a Haq Darshak, one organization which has come out. If we put together cities, states and central government and state, there are more than 2,000 or 2,500 welfare schemes. But its coverage is so problematic. So legal responsibility of public provision, for example, Kerala government has constructed dormitories, and the word is guest workers, and where employers can take that dormitory on the rent and can give a shelter to these migrant workers. Or very recently now, there is a affordable public rental housing scheme wherein government has lot of affordable houses which are not constructed for the slum dwellers, not taken up, not being able to allot, can be taken by the employers or the private sector with the government, and it can be for own use, for own employees, or it can be running the rental housing program. Guidelines are out. I hope in next 1 or 2 years. That's a step, much awaited step, right direction. PDS, yes, that's again, but similar kind of a thing, and that staticness has to go. The Ayushman Bharat example which I give, and all these measures backed by the right integrated technological solution, which is the real purpose of today's this. Same thing with the urban poor. As I said, a universal definition, then nationwide enumeration, institutional structure, policy, ministry. Earlier, there was a Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, which was then merged 2 years back, 3 years back in 2017 to make Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. I personally feel there should be a separate Ministry of Urban Poverty Alleviation, which will integrate work of all other ministries. So we need to create institutional structure. We need to create some kind of a legal mandates that giving some sort of a right to the every urban poor that he is entitled to registration. He is entitled for those welfare schemes to get benefits. So real-time application program, something which you people can be able to design, and then there can be community participation. As I said, elected representatives, member of parliament, government officer should be able to recommend that this person is an urban poor. Government departments will do the validation, and today validation with the technological solution is not at all difficult. Any person with Aadhaar card and other different cards can be triangulated and can be certified that he is an urban poor. Two things we did. See, this was done without any technological thing. 3 years back, NULM, we realized that our members, women which are, they are not covered by under different welfare schemes. And it was provided in the guidelines. So I, with my team and ministry officials and across the India, all we have more than 4,50,000 women group, 10 women in each group. So there are 45 lakh and then entire NULM machinery. What we achieved is that we simply said that ask your each and every member that are you covered in under this? Have you got in individual house latrine? Have you got Arogya Bima? Have you got Jan Dhan Yojana? And the data is here. And we covered these 6 or 7 schemes with a sound kind of a thing, and that has now become a kind of a mechanism. And we are trying to see that each and every of our member, that is 45 lakh women, means 45 lakh families across the India, are covered for each and every scheme for which they are entitled or eligible. Similar thing last year we did. There was a 100 days impact program when new government came into power at central level. And what we realized, NULM, that Ayushman Bharat card scheme is there, but urban poor don't know that whether their name is there and whether he is entitled for, because never ever that ACCC list was made public. So Ayushman Bharat scheme was announced, but urban poor were not knowing that they are in that list and he is entitled to get that Ayushman Bharat card. So in 100 days, again we run it with our SSG members because we were not having technological options. We utilized our contact system, passing on the message and then getting each and every person to educate each other and then to get him registered. But we got health checkup done, we validated beneficiaries 2 lakh, and in that 100 days, we got 2 lakh people actually issued with those Ayushman Bharat card. So if this can work at a community communication level, technology can do the wonders, and we can reimagine life and livelihood for migrants and urban through technological solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ravi bhai.